are being plotted in our Cartesian plane, wherein there is a variable or the x-axis and the y-axis. That's why scatter plot is a collection of ordered pair. So the graph reflects a bunch of dots, but some of the graphs have the graphs are a general shape or move on in a general direction. So when we have a scatter plot, it follows a certain direction that we can easily describe. We can easily identify what is the description of that specific scatter plot that we have. So we have two types of association and correlation when it comes to the direction of our scatter plot. The first type of correlation or association that we have is what we call the positive correlation. In the positive correlation, if the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate are both increasing, then it has a direction which is a positive correlation. That means that the both are gaining up and they are related. So if you're going to look at the direction of the dots in the graph that you have, it the dot is going to your right. That's the direction of your scatter plot. Direction is going to right, from left to right. That is positive correlation or positive association. We have two types of positive association or positive correlation. The first type of positive correlation or association is what we call the strong positive correlation or strong positive association. When we say strong positive, that means the scatter plot or the dots that we have on the screen or in our graph is not separated or not scattered. They are in, they have only a few space in between on the dots that we have on the graph. That is what we mean by the strong positive. It doesn't have or it doesn't indicate a scatter. Okay? The dots that we have on the graph is not scattered. That's why it's a strong positive. And the second type of a positive correlation is what we called the weak positive correlation or the weak positive association. When we have the weak positive association, that means the dots in the graph that we have is separated, but with the same direction that is going to the right. Okay? Or the dots that we have on the graph is scattered. So that is the two type of the correlation, positive correlation that we have, which is the strong positive association and the weak positive association. But strong positive, that means the dot is not scattered. But if we have a weak positive correlation or weak positive association, that means that the dots in the graph that we have is scattered. Or they have a distance with each other. May distance ang kada dots that you have in the graph. But they are proceeding in one direction that is going to the right of your graph. That is positive. If you're going to remember the line, the slope of a line, if you have a positive slope and if you have a negative slope, a positive slope, the direction of the slope is from your left to right. That is positive slope. It's the same concept also with your positive correlation or positive association. That the direction of the dot is from the left side of the Cartesian plane going to the right side of the Cartesian plane. Okay, for example, we have this data that emphasize that we have a positive correlation. Okay. For example, we have here a set of data about the age and the height of a child. As the child get older, its height is also getting higher. So it's a positive correlation since both the age and the height are increasing at the same time. Once the age get higher, the height is also going to get higher, getting taller. So that is what we mean by a positive correlation. Both the coordinates that you have on the set of data is increasing. The second type of correlation that we have, kung meron tayong positive correlation, we also have the negative correlation. When we say negative correlation, if the x coordinates and the y coordinates have one increasing and one decreasing, then it is a negative correlation. It means one of the coordinate is decreasing and the other coordinate is increasing. Okay? So that is what we mean by a negative correlation. If you're going to look at the direction of the dots that you have in the graph, it's going to from right to left. That's the direction of the dots that you have when the data or the coordinate that you have is a negative correlation. Okay? That is a negative slope from your right side of your Cartesian plane going to the left side. That's the direction of the dots in the graph that we have. So if in the positive correlation or in the positive association, you have two types. We have two types also of negative correlation or negative association, which is the strong negative. It's the same concept with your strong positive. That if you have a strong negative correlation or strong negative association, that means the dots that we have in the graph is not scattered. But if you have a weak negative correlation or weak negative association, that means that the dots in the graph that we have is scattered. So that is the thing that you can describe by just looking at the graph, the distance on each dot that we have in the graph, and the direction of the dots that we have in the graph. You can describe it if it's positive or a negative, if it has a strong correlation or strong association, or a weak correlation or a weak association. So that is the only thing that we can describe when it comes to the correlation and association by just looking at the graph that we have. The other type of correlation that we have, if we have a positive correlation, a negative correlation, we also have the no correlation. But one of the example of a negative correlation based on a set of data, for example, we have here that emphasize that you have a negative correlation. For example, the age of a car. As the age of the car increases, the value of the price of that car decreases. Okay, so that is a negative. Just like in supply and demand in economics. If there is higher supply, there is a lower demand. There's a contradiction when it comes to its concept where you're going to talking about economics, supply and demand. If you have higher demand, the supply is lower. So it's a negative correlation since it's contradicting the direction of the supply and demand. Okay, so that is negative correlation. So the third type of correlation that we may encounter with the direction of our dots in the graph that we have is the no correlation. In the no correlation, if there seems to be no pattern and the points look scattered, then it is no correlation. That means the dot doesn't follow any direction. Kahit saan nakalagay yung dots. Okay? So based on that graph, that means the data doesn't have, or we don't have a correlation. That means the x coordinate and the y coordinate is not related to each other. So it's a no correlation. As you can see here on the graph that we have, the direction of the dots is in any direction. It can be on the left side or on the right side. And more on the dots of the graph that we have here is scattered. Example of a no correlation data that we may encounter. For example, if you look at the size shoe a baseball player wears and their batting average, you will find that the shoe size does not make the player better or worse, then are not related. So that two coordinates about the size of the shoes of a player and describing if it's a best or not is not related to each other because the size of the shoes will not affect the performance of a player. Okay, so that is what we mean by ano correlation data. We're not going to proceed yet with solving for a correlation kasi medyo madugo-dugo yan. Medyo mahirap yung correlation solving.
Oh, no.
Oh no, we're just going to have the description only. Description muna tayo. Tomorrow tayo mag-solve for the correlation. Okay, so before we proceed with solving for the correlation using a specific formula indicating the relationship of the correlation of the coordinates that we have based on the graph that we have, okay, let's answer questions here in your discovery education describing the scatter plot. So you're just going to describe if it's a strong positive association, a weak positive association, or a strong negative association, or a weak negative association, or no association at all, or no correlation. I will assign this activity. Do not answer the last two questions in this discovery education kasi solving na yung last two questions. Kindly go to your discovery education. About describing the direction of the dots in the graph that we have.